Don't need that right now. Just talk to Allan, and he is feeling better today than he has since this whole ordeal started for him. And I told him, and he passes on to you all, first of all, thanks for all the prayers and all of the good wishes that have been somewhat fruitful. And I told him that we would continue in that vein. And now we will also do that for ourselves. But this sermon, I started off thinking it was going to be 3 or 4. I've done that before. And the last time I did that, it wound up being 8. That won't happen this time. I've been kind of doing this one in my head for a while, but there isn't much conclusive information there. That was what the scholars said anyway. And the writer said something different. And I will get through this somehow. The Canaanites were a group of people who lived in ancient Canaan along the east coast of the Mediterranean Sea, known today as Israel. The name Canaanite was also used in a general way to refer to these 10 nations in the area. Sometimes the Amorites were named in the same way. These people were so evil that Yahweh commanded their extermination. Specifically in the books of Deuteronomy and Joshua. We'll get through that. And some people said it wasn't there, but I did find it. The question at the heart of this topic is this the world's view, not mine. How can an all-loving God command the extermination of the Canaanites and have Israel carry it out, as recorded in the books of Joshua and Judges and Deuteronomy? The reality is that this topic is perhaps one of the most difficult issues in the Bible to understand, justify, and digest. The point of this discussion is not to provide a completely satisfactory answer, for they know there is much we do not understand about this period, but we do know the character of Yahweh. And he does not make requests. And it is genuinely an emotionally difficult concept to reconcile for many. I do not know if sinners who do not fully understand the righteousness, justice, and greater all-encompassing will of Yahweh will ever be able to comprehend fully or accept the answer the Bible gives on this issue. The point instead is to give insight that is never discussed by those who attack Christianity over this issue. And delving deeper into the issue, we will find out why they have so much trouble with it. The commands about how Israel was to conduct themselves in war with the surrounding nations appears in two major passages. And drop anchor here in Deuteronomy, the 7th chapter, the 1st verse. When Yahweh your Elohim brings you into the land that you are about to enter into, to take possession of it, and he drives out many nations before you, the Hittites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. Jebus at one time contained Israelites also. 7 nations mightier and more numerous than you. And Yahweh your Elohim will give them over to you, and you defeat them. You must utterly destroy them. No secondary meaning to that, is there? You shall not make a covenant with them, and you shall not show mercy to them, and you shall not intermarry with them. You shall not give your daughter to their son, and you shall not take his daughter for your son. For their sons and daughters will cause you, your son, to turn away from following me. And so they will serve other gods. And the anger of Yahweh would be kindled against you. And he would quickly destroy you. But this is what you must do to them. You shall break down their altars and their stone pillars you shall smash, and their Asherah poles you shall hew down, and you shall burn their idols with fire. For you are a holy people for Yahweh, your Elohim. Yahweh, your Elohim, has chosen you to be for him a people, a treasured possession from among all the peoples that are on the face of the earth. Doesn't give you any position of specialness unless you obey him. That was what was forgotten here in a lot of ways. Verse 7, Yahweh loved you and chose you, not because of your great number exceeding all other peoples, for you are fewer than all peoples. Continuing at 17. Deuteronomy 7, chapter 17th verse. Deuteronomy, the 7th chapter, the 17th verse. If you think in your heart, these nations are more numerous than I, so how can I dispossess them? Then remember, you must not be afraid of them. You must well remember what Yahweh your Elohim did to Pharaoh and to all of Egypt. The great trials that your eyes saw, and the signs and the wonders and the workings of the strong hand and the outstretched arm by which Yahweh your Elohim brought you out. So Yahweh your Elohim will do all of these people because of whom you are, and fear before them. And moreover, Yahweh your Elohim will send the hornets among you until both the survivors and the fugitives are destroyed before you. You must not be in dread from the presence of them, because Yahweh your Elohim, who is in your presence in your midst, is a great and awesome Elohim. And Yahweh your Elohim will clear away these nations from before you, little by little. And that's the hang up in the eyes of the scholars. He did it little by little. There was a reason for that. You'll get to that a little later. Elohim will clear away these nations from before you, little by little. You will not be able to finish them off quickly, lest the wild animals multiply against you. That's one of the reasons why so many went to other leaders in their walled cities. The animals were all over the place. And anytime the people thinned out, the animals filled in. Nature abhors a vacuum. 23. But Yahweh your Elohim will give them to you, and he will throw them into panic until they are destroyed. I don't have any questions about it after this. And the thing that hangs up everybody is that little by little. 24. And he will give their kings into your hand, and you shall blot out their names from under heaven. Anyone will not be able to stand against you until you destroy them. You shall burn the images of their gods with fire. You shall not covet the silver or gold that is on them, and so you shall take it for yourself, so that you are not ensnared by it. For it is a detestable thing to Yahweh your Elohim. And you must not bring a detestable thing into your house, or you will become a thing devoted to destruction like it. You must utterly detest it, and you must utterly abhor it, for it is an object devoted to destruction. Need more? I got it. Deuteronomy 20. Tenth verse. Deuteronomy 20th chapter, the 10th verse. When you approach a city to fight against it, you must offer it peace. And then if they accept your terms of peace and their surrender to you, and then all the people inhabiting it shall be forced labor for you, and they shall serve you. But if they do not accept your terms of peace, and they want to make war with you, then you shall lay siege against it. And Yahweh your Elohim will give it into your hands, and you shall kill all its males with the edge of the sword, and the women and the little children and the domestic animals and all that shall be in the city. All of it is your spoil. You may loot for yourselves, and you may enjoy the spoil of your enemies that Yahweh your Elohim has given to you. Thus you shall do to all the cities, far cities, from you which are not from the cities of these nations located nearby, but from the cities of these peoples that Yahweh your Elohim is giving to you as an inheritance. You shall not let anything live that breathes. Rather, you shall utterly destroy them: the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, just as Yahweh your Elohim has commanded you, so that they may not teach you to do all their detestable things that they do for their gods, and thereby you sin against Yahweh your Elohim. If you besiege a town for many days to make war against it in order to seize it, you shall not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them, for you may eat from them. These days we could go into an area and fight for weeks. Their food supplies ran out. And then all of a sudden you got a use for that fruit on those trees. So you must not cut them down. Are the trees of the field humans that they should come and siege against you? Are the trees of the field humans that they should come and siege against you? Only the trees that you know are not fruit trees you must destroy. And you may cut down and you may build siege works against that city that is making war with you until it falls. And the first states that the Canaanites were to be handed over to destruction. The handing over reinforces the command that the Israelites were to make no treaties, show no mercy, and not intermarry with them. In the second, the law states that Israel was to attack other nations outside the land of Canaan only if they were attacked first. They were to then first offer peace, and if the nations refused, they could kill only the adult males, while the women, children, and animals and spoils may be taken as plunder. Yet the text makes clear that the second law did not apply to those living in Canaan. From the very beginning, Yahweh made it clear that the Canaanites were distinct from all other nations. They were not distinct just because they worshiped other gods or were sinful, for that was true of all nations, including the Israelites at times. What made them distinct, though, was the extent of their sin, their cultural approval of their sin and rebellion. And their unwillingness to relent or repent of their evil. First, it must be understood that the extermination of the Canaanites had nothing to do with ethnicity, religion, or land. It had everything to do with the judgment of a people for their sins. Yahweh did not command Israel to exterminate the Canaanites because they were different ethnically. In fact, the Canaanites were Semitic just like the Israelites. Nor did Yahweh command Israel to exterminate everyone who did not convert to Judaism. There was no Judaism at the time. That thing that is there now wasn't there at the time. That was never the religion of Yahweh. That was a bastardization of it, but it never was the religion of Yahweh or Yeshua. Three of the 10 nations were dealt with before Israel entered into the land of Canaan, leaving 7 after they entered the land. Yahweh made it clear that Israel was not allowed to attack any of the nations unless that other nation attacked first. And even then, they were only to drive them back, not destroy them. That's where the confusion comes. The world has this thing like Satan tried. You let them do it. Let them do it too. God doesn't work like that. Israel was never commanded in the Bible to kill the Canaanites, merely to take control of the land. Rather, Yahweh made it clear that the Canaanite people were being destroyed for their sin. Nothing else. The land that was then vacant after the conquest was to give to Israel as a blessing for their obedience. But if they sinned as Canaan had, then they too would lose the land. That's one of the reasons why the world has so much trouble with killing of Canaan. It's a valid displacement of them from that land. The present day Jews say that they were always in possession of that land. This proves that they don't have that claim against them legitimately. And that's why scholarship goes so against this doctrine, and including our churches. The reason Yahweh repeatedly gives repeatedly for the extermination of the Canaanites is that it is their judgment for their sin and rebellion against him. At this time, the best thing to do with regard to this is give a example or two. Genesis, the 15th chapter, the 16th verse. Genesis, the 15th chapter, the 16th verse. But in the fourth generation, they shall come here again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. As I said earlier, these names are basically all the same people in the same area. The Amorites was one of the names. Genesis, the 18th chapter, the 20th verse. And these you've heard before. And Yahweh said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down there and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me. And if not, I will know. And he did it to them. Examples are all over the place. He's done it before. Leviticus, the 18th chapter, the 20th verse. Leviticus, the 18th chapter, the 20th verse. And you shall not lie carnally with your neighbor's wife, to defile yourself with her. And you shall not let any of your seed pass through the fire to Molech. Neither shall you profane the name of your Elohim. I am Yahweh. You shall not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is an abomination to Yahweh. And that's another little reason that they come against this. Now all of a sudden, it's all right. Not what Yahweh says. Verse 23. And further, and I've seen this, not up close, but I've heard of it. 23. And you shall not lie with an animal to defile yourself with it. And a woman shall not stand before an animal to lie down to it. It is a perversion. Anybody that has spent any time in a high-rise long enough with a pair of binoculars, you kind of see a little bit of everything, and some of this too. And this was downtown. "24. Do not defile yourselves in any of these things, for in all these the nations are defiled, which I cast out before you. And the land is defiled." Don't miss this. "Therefore I visit its wickedness on it, and the land itself vomits out those people who live in it. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations. Judgments and the abominations. Neither the native nor any stranger that lives among you. For the men of the land who were before you have done all these abominations, and the land is defiled. You shall not do these things, so that the land may not spew you out after when you defile it, as it spewed out the nations that were there before you. For whoever shall commit any of these abominations, even the souls who commit them, shall be cut off from among their people. And you shall keep my ordinance, so as not to do any of these abominable customs which were committed before you, and that you do not defile yourselves in them. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Deuteronomy, the 7th chapter, the 3rd verse. Nor shall you make marriages with them. You shall not give your daughter to his son, nor shall you take his daughter to your son. For they will turn away your son from following me, so that they may serve other gods. So the anger of Yahweh will be kindled against you and will destroy you little by little. Suddenly. There is a difference. Deuteronomy, the 9th chapter, the 4th verse. Do not speak in your heart after Yahweh your Elohim has cast them out from before you, saying, for my righteousness Yahweh has brought me in to possess this land. But for the wickedness of these nations, Yahweh your Elohim drives them out from before you. Not for your righteousness or for the unrighteousness of your heart. Do you go to possess the land? But for the wickedness of these nations, Yahweh your Elohim drives them out from before you, so that he may perform the word which Yahweh swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Therefore understand that Yahweh your Elohim does not give you this good land to possess it for your righteousness, for you are a stiff-necked people. He made it clear what he was doing there. The Canaanites, as a whole culture, committed sins of idolatry, holy temple prostitution. Break that down for them for a minute. They were having sex in the temple to please their gods. And all of this is going to happen shortly. And people aren't going to believe it. Aren't going to believe it. The Canaanites as a whole culture committed sins of idolatry, holy temple prostitution, adultery, homosexuality, incest, murder, bestiality, gang rape, and child sacrifice. Don't be so fast with that one, U.S. The same as abortion. The same as abortion. We don't recognize that. It's a child, it's a choice. His choice, not yours. I have said so many times, the time to make the choice isn't in the bedroom. It's before you get there. And the choice is marriage. If you're not getting married, you didn't supposed to do that anyway. But you're coming to some conclusions here about how they had so much difficulty with killing off the Canaanites. In a lot of ways, we're just like them. Though other cultures also participated in some of these practices, it was the widespread involvement and acceptance of these sins that brought the Canaanites under Yahweh's judgment. These sins exist in every culture, then and now, but are forbidden by most governments. I speak very much with my hands and movements because a lot of this stuff right now, you say it on the air, you get pulled off. Can't get pulled off for looking at the wall. But I will say it again because it's here. Then and now, but are forbidden by most governments and are socially condemned by the majority of people in all cultures. However, suddenly these sins are not so slowly being legalized in the U.S. But, however, in Canaanite culture, these sins were pretty much universally accepted and practiced. Because this is what their gods were like. Not only did they declare these acts as righteous morality, but they also participated in these acts in the worship of their gods as a means of gaining their God's approval. They even did it in the temples. Most people can understand the men being killed by Yahweh's command. Of the death of the women and children is much harder to understand. The women were killed because they participated in the violence, child sacrifices, bestiality, and sexual immorality, just as much as the men did. A few years back, the cry went up, women doing it for themselves. Didn't know what they were talking about back then, now you do. And it's becoming a thing here also. I don't name any names, but listen to some rap music. That's all I can say. You can hear anything there. Most of this is heard there in some form. And And they talk so fast, but it's the same thing. And it's becoming a thing with our young people. Again, the women would often fight in battles and participate with the men in the cutting off of their enemies' heads and hands. They would often seduce the men from villages so that their men could kill them. And one story like this was in the Bible. This is how you will get a better framework for it when you see it yourselves. Turn to Judges, the 16th chapter, the 4th verse. And it happened afterwards, he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines, what? Who? The Philistines. They're now a little bit shorter, but the Philistines became the Palestinians. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, lure him. Heard this before? And see where his great strength lies, and by what means we may prevail against him, so that we may tie him to afflict him. And each one of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. And Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies, and with that you may be bound to afflict you. And Samson said to her, if they bind me with 7 green cords that were never dried, then I shall be weak and be as another man. Verse 8. Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 green cords, and which had not been dried, and she bound him with them. And the ambush was setting in her room. And she said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he broke the cords like a thread of tow when it smells fire. And his strength was not known. And Delilah said to Samson, behold, you have mocked me and told me lies. What did you do? Well, he let you do it. That's another thing altogether. Now, please tell me with what you may be bound. And he said to her, if they bind me fast with new ropes that have never been used, then I shall be weak and be as another man. And Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them and said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And the ambush was set forth in her room, and he broke them from his arms like a thread. And Delilah said to Samson, you have lied to me again. Tell me with what you may be bound. And he said to her, if you weave the 7 locks of my head. Note that. If you weave the 7 locks of my head with the web. He had only 7 hairs? I could get into that, but that's some other stuff I found. Sherry will know what I'm talking about. If you weave the 7 locks of my head with the web, and she fastened it with a pin, and he said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he awakened out of his sleep and pulled out the pin, the heirloom, and the web. And she said to him, how can you say to me, I love you, and your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times and have not told me in where your great strength lies. And it happened because she distressed him with her words daily and urged him, and his soul was grieved to death, kind of like Adam. And we don't go there either today. 17. And he told him all his heart. And he told her all his heart and said to her, a razor has not come on my hair, for I am a Nazarite to Yahweh from my mother's womb. What? He was dedicated from the womb like somebody else. If I am shaven, then my strength will go from me, and I will become weak and be like any other man. Why was someone born to be a Nazarite messing around with someone like this in the first place? Something to think about. But she was a Philistine, was a descendant of the Canaanites. 18. And when Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, so he sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, come this once, for he has shown me all his heart. Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought silver in their hand. And she made him sleep upon her knees. And she called for a man, and she caused him to shave off the 7 locks of his head. And she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. And she said, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he awoke out of his sleep and said, I will go out as other times before and shake myself. And he did not know that Yahweh had departed from him. The only people that had the Holy Spirit internally at that time were those who were prophets or something other. And once he sinned, it departed. And the Philistines took him and put out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza. They're still there. The clues are all through this book if you know how to look for them. And brought him to Gaza and bound him with fetters of brass. And he ground in the prison house. However, the hair of his head began to grow again after he had been shaven. Read the rest of this story on your own and get a firmer context for this story. They also willingly offered their own children as a burned sacrifice. The idea that women are more righteous or less sinful than men is a modern day myth.
It sure is.
I want to say some names so bad. I won't. Some of y'all might listen to her. The destruction of the children is much harder to understand. But there is a concept known as generational sin, wherein a child will become like his parents, not only because he was raised under their instruction and example, but also because he came genetically from those parents. There are certainly exceptions, but they are just that, exceptions. I moved from one neighborhood to another several times in the early days, and each neighborhood had its own personality. And either you went along with the people in that neighborhood or you were ostracized. And that's all I can say there. We all went through it in our own way, wherever we were. I put mine out there, that negates yours. You think on yours, and you can fly free to think what you want. But there are certainly exceptions. But they are just that, exceptions. We already know that certain people are more disposed genetically to alcoholism and other addictive tendencies. Scientists are even now trying to find a gay gene. So far, though, they have come up empty. And ultimately, that question can be answered only when one comes to understand that Yahweh is good, and that a Yahweh who is willing to die for us, even for the Canaanites, that will come up later, is a Yahweh who can be trusted with, where babies and children go when they die. But they are not placed here flawed that way. And I can guarantee that they won't find a gay gene unless they make it up like that COVID-19 thing that they made up and are vaccinating for us for it. They wouldn't have had to vaccinate us if they hadn't made it in the first place. Oops, I said it now. Also, this language of killing everyone may have been hyperbolic and reserved for the main political and military cities in which by nature all the women and children were in this case. And they would be more corrupt simply because of where they lived. Sodom and Gomorrah, for instance. This is seen in the fact that only the cities that are listed as being defeated in the book of Joshua, to that point, Yahweh commanded the Israelites to not intermarry with the Canaanites, which seems, to me it didn't seem odd. If they were married, they would carry on their awful tendencies. The scholars found that odd. I don't. But I forgot to give you all the title. The Extermination of the Canaanites, a request or an order. Part 2 next week.
Oh, Pastor, mess with us.
God doesn't make requests with an order.
That was good.